So the purpose of this video is to try to give you some ways to figure out why your electric bill might be so high. After I got a bill that was significantly higher than I'd ever seen, coincidentally shortly after getting a smart meter, I did a bit of a deep dive to figure out exactly why. I see a lot of people on social media complaining, making claims about smart meters, rate increases, day-night metering, etc., without any actual data or facts. And unfortunately, I think we're all wasting our breath without those facts. So if there's going to be any change, I think we're going to have to compile some real data. The first thing that I did was to make sure that I was even getting the right bill. Um, NYSEG uses contractors, probably the lowest bidder, and to install those meters, my confidence that they installed the right meter at the right location was not very high, to say the least. So what I wanted to do is make sure that the serial number that was on my meter, so if you can see here, here's a picture of my meter, ends in 6111, actually matched what was on my bill in terms of meter number. And again, you can see it ends in 611. My thought was that it was possible that they installed someone else's meter at my location and vice versa, and that I might actually be paying for somebody else's utilization. While we have the bill up, the other thing I think that's really important to do is note that once you have a smart meter, your meter reading should all say A next to them as an actual. That means there should be no more estimates, because they would estimate in the past so that they didn't have to drive around and read everybody's meter every single month. It saved them some fuel and time. But now that they report in daily, there's really no reason for that. So you just double check and make sure they're not estimating, because you should be absolutely charged for actual and just actual. So that being said, this requires no special skills, doesn't cost anything. Simply go take a picture of your meter, compare it to the serial number on your bill, and if it matches, great, move on to the next step. If it doesn't, obviously, that's something you're going to need to investigate. The next thing I think is it's important to understand if your increase is due to rate increases or usage increases. Even if you think nothing has changed, you need to confirm that. I'll show you why later in the video. If you have a smart meter, get yourself a New York State Electric and Gas webpage login. It's again free, takes no special skills, and you should just do it. Each smart meter reports utilization each day and has usage broke down by year, month, day, and to the hour. It even provides tools to overlay ambient temperature against usage, so you could see the effects of cold weather, for example, against your energy consumption. So take a look by starting at the whole year. So I've pulled that up here. This is their tool. Just log into their web page and then click on More Energy Insights, and you can get brought to this page. And you can see that you can look at it by year. So this is my full year's consumption, and you can see what got me wound up here in December and January compared to all of the rest of the months, significantly higher. And you can even go to previous year, and you can see how much higher it was than the entire previous year. So obviously I knew something was up. My yearly average was 547 kilowatts last year, and the year before, and then last year it was 933. Pretty significant jump. You can do things like overlay temperature, like I said. So this is high temperature and then low temperature. And in a perfect world, you would see as temperature decreased, utilization should increase, right? Because you're using more energy to keep your home warm one way or another, whether it's running your furnace or electric heat. And as you can see in my example, there's really no correlation between temperature and energy consumption, which was a bit of a clue to me. You can look at it by month. And so you can see this is this last month's, and we can go to previous month, and you can see, what was going on here. And the first things that I was looking for was patterns over the course of the year, right? You're going to have seasonal fluctuation based on HVAC usage, whether it's air conditioning in the summer or heating in the winter. And then there's going to be some months where you have very low, May, June, before it gets hot and it's not cold, where you should have the lowest consumption, etc. So start looking for patterns. I couldn't really find any. I could just see that some days were next to nothing, 14, 13, 14 kilowatts. Other days were as high as 48 kilowatts per day, which is crazy to me. And I'll show you how to kind of calculate what that means in a little bit here. So look for patterns in your years, in your months, maybe day of the week. Look for things that might be on timers, etc. And then look at it by day. You can see, there should be some fluctuations that should decrease later in the evening after everybody's gone to bed, might increase first thing in the morning when people get up and go to work for a little while. Maybe if nobody's home during the day, it should be low again. Then in the evening, when it's dark out, people are home doing things, watching TV, using energy. You should maybe see it go up again, and the cycle should generally repeat. So as mentioned in my case, my utilization was well out of line, so I needed to figure out what was causing that high consumption, because obviously, if we look at the previous month here, we know something odd is going on, because we've got days where there's very low consumption and the rest are very, very high, which is historically not what we had seen. So what I did was went out and got a clamp meter from Amazon. And if you're not familiar what a clamp meter is, it is a way to measure amps. I'll show you what one looks like here. So this is a pretty typical clamp meter. So you clamp this around one of the conductors and going to a particular circuit, and you can see how many amps that particular circuit is drawing. And I'll show you what we do with that in a minute. So I bought that tool. It's only about $25. I'll put an affiliate link down in the description. And what I did was try to capture what each of the circuits in the house was doing at multiple different times. So then I took those numbers and plugged them into a spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet looks like this, and I'll share this so that you can take a look at it and actually use it. So the idea here is this represents both circuit panels, or both columns of circuits in my circuit panel. So if I take a look at my breaker box, I had a set of breakers along the left and a set of breakers along the right. So I made a column for the left panel and a column for the right panel. Cells in yellow are calculations, so there's nothing really for you to enter in there. So as I measured each circuit, I wrote down what I got from the clamp meter in each of the lines corresponding with circuits. Then I put in how long did I think it was going to be running. So in my case, I was thinking, well, worst case is 24 hours a day. So I did that for both panels, and as you can see, it's doing some math here. The math is taking the amount of time that's running and the amps used and coming up with the total number of kilowatts used. So I did the math for you. And then it sums it up at the bottom for each column, and then sums it up for total kilowatt hours. So what I immediately thought was, there's no way that everything in this house is running for 24/7 to come close to 47 kilowatts. In fact, if you look back, I had some days that I was being billed for over 70 kilowatts in a day. I think if we look back here, let's see. we had some days that were 78 kilowatts. So that's significantly higher than what it would be even if everything was running at 24/7. So I knew something else was still not quite right. I also have a tab in here for an hour. So if you wanted to see how many kilowatts you were using in an hour, so just change the 24 to an hour for each of these columns, and it'll sum it all up and do the math for you. I also put in a calculator here. If you put in how many amps, it'll calculate the kilowatts for you. So if this is 5 amps, for example, it'll be 6 kilowatts. If you put in the kilowatts here, it's going to tell you how many amps it is. So I'll put a link in the description for this spreadsheet. You can download it and use it, to try to help you figure out, what's going on and see if what you're measuring actually aligns with what you're billing. And this doesn't require, a lot of money, 25 bucks, and it doesn't require a ton of skill. If you're not sure how to do it, um, good chance you have someone else that you might trust that can help you with that. It's not hard. You just have to have a little bit of knowledge of what not to touch in a breaker box so that you don't get a shock, or have somebody else, come and help you do that. So in my case, I tried to do that a bunch of different times, and I didn't really get to, the answers that I was hoping for. I thought that, I'd see one of these particular circuits using a ton of electricity, and I'd say, oh, there's my problem. I'd go find out what was plugged into that, and solve my challenge, but I didn't. The next thing I took a look at was my rates. So what I did was, um, took an old bill. I called NYSEG and got an old bill from January of 2024, and I built a spreadsheet here. That spreadsheet, I'll make it a little bigger, shows you exactly what the rates were for each of the delivery charges, and compares that to January of 2025 current rates over here. So, and then I plugged in the exact same kilowatt usage into both, and I did that for the delivery charge and the supply charge. So again, this is 2024 data right off of my January 2024 bill, and the rate changes really went into effect in October for perspective. And then this is January 2025's rates, and then again, same kilowatts, put in the service charges. One thing I did notice is they did add a $5 recovery charge, which they didn't have back in 2024, so that you're going to automatically get a $5 increase in your bill. At least I did, based on the usage I have. And what I found out was my current bill is about $303. If the rate changes had not went into effect, it would have been about $251. That's about a 21% increase. So that's a lot, but that doesn't account for the significant increase in bills that I'm seeing from a lot of people, posting on the Facebook groups. So moving on to the next phase here, um, I really determined that for me, I needed to figure out what was causing that high consumption. I had some preconceived ideas, but again, I put meters on the breakers, and I just couldn't catch whatever was drawing so much. I thought it might be things like, the 220-volt well pump maybe sticking on, or maybe an old freezer that's running constantly, or something along those lines. So what I ended up doing is investigating some real-time monitoring and logging systems, and found this thing called the Emporium View, which is this guy right here. It was on Amazon. It's about 200 bucks. Again, I'll put an affiliate link in the description of the video here. It allows you to monitor your mains incoming mains, and also 16, in the case of this one, 16 different circuits. If you have less you need to monitor, you can get a cheaper one for like 150 bucks that only monitors, I think 8, but I had 16 different circuits, so I wanted the one that tracked 16 different breakers. So what this box does is you install it into your breaker panel, put one of these sensors on each of the mains coming in, and then put a sensor on each of the circuits, and it tracks in real time and records usage on your overall electric consumption and on each of the various lines going out to your, your receptacles and lights in the house. So here's what the app looks like. What it allows you to do is, so there's 16 different sensors, like I said, and your mains are up here at the top, and it allows you to name them. So I named each of those 16 circuits based on, the names that were labeled in the breaker panel. So you can see I had 16 different circuits, and I just basically started with those labels, and then I also kind of tested them to make sure that what was actually connected to the furnace. When I turned it off, the furnace went off, or when I turned off the bathroom light circuit, that the bathroom lights went off, and added some things that I knew were plugged in certain places so that this meant something to me. I kind of knew what each of these individual circuits was, and that's kind of important. The next thing I did was entered in what my costs were. So you can actually go in and change the unit of measurement from currency, watts, amps, or whatever. We're going to look at watts here because I think that makes the most sense. So then you have a number of different ways to break this down. It always sorts the highest usage items on top. So if I click live, this is real time. I know the receptacle by the garage door in the back is using 0.88 kilowatts or 89 watts, which is relatively low. And it will actually graph that. So my total usage for the day is 9.77 kilowatts. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I had used as much as 70 plus kilowatts in a day. So less than 10 for a day is fantastic compared to what I was getting hit with. You can see, which makes sense. It's kind of cold out. The furnace is the biggest draw next to this outlet that has a bunch of things plugged into it. And then this washer, receptacle, freezer was kind of a big one. And it shows you by percentage what you're actually using. So your main usage is at the top. And then what it does is it compares your main usage to the sum of all of your other circuits and compares the delta. So in my case, I've got about 3% of electricity that's not accounted for somewhere, and that's probably just in the decimal rounding here. Anything less than 5% is, pretty acceptable. So what you can do is you can set notifications in here. So I have some set where if my overall usage exceeds a certain kilowatts, I'm going to get a notification. Or if a certain receptacle or circuit goes over a certain usage in a given amount of time, it will give you a notification. And there's tons of different notifications that you can set up in here, so you can add as many as you want. I set up a couple for high usage, so when something was using a ton of power, I could go see what it was. So it tells you exactly what it was and where it was. So you can see I used basically 1.3 kilowatts during the time frame of in military time 2035. So about 8:35 this evening. And if I go back to my home screen here, and if we look at minutes, and we go back to 8:35, if we can go back that far, we can only go back about an hour at the moment. I know when I looked earlier, what it was this receptacle that has a freezer plugged into it. So what I figured out was that this freezer occasionally sticks on and will draw as much as 11 amps for hours at a time, if not days at a time. And so I was able to kind of determine that that was, the cause of, my excessive usage. And it's an easy fix, right? Unplug it and you're good. So I would have never found that because it sticks intermittently. And when you measured it with your clamp meter, you didn't see it unless it was acting up. And every time I was down there and adjusted, turned off breakers to do some testing and stuff, it would reset the freezer. So of course, when I measured it, it was behaving after it was just reset. So bottom line, here's what I found. The data here matches my smart meter exactly, and I'll show you what I mean. So your smart meter data is always a couple of days behind. So let's go to 3.2. You see I had about 14.3 kilowatt used. So if we go back to the Energy Manager and we go back to day, back to month, and we go to 3.2, Sunday, March 2nd, 14 kilowatts, matches exactly. So we'll go back another day just to prove our point. Go back to 3.1, use 17.63, which rounded up is 18. So what that tells you is that the smart meter is reporting accurate utilization as measured by third-party independent equipment. So basically, now that we kind of went through all the moving parts, there's really only a few reasons that your bill could go up, right? It could be a rate increase, which we determined is 21%, which is not that, it's bad, but it's not that bad. It could be related to utilization, which in my case, it absolutely was. We proved what it was, and we actually found out what was causing it. It could be because your smart meter is improperly reporting, and we proved, at least in my case, that the smart meter is reporting exactly what is being utilized. So, I mean, mystery solved for me. And I think we all need to kind of take it upon ourselves to get to the bottom of this, because New York State isn't going to help you unless you can prove that fraud's taking place. NYSEG isn't going to help you because, quite honestly, they don't care, and they're not going to invest the time, energy, or resources to come out and do the work I just showed you how to do. And believe me, I want a lower bill, but all of us just complaining about it with anecdotal data on a Facebook book isn't going to get it done. So my hope is that you guys will watch the video here, use some of the tools and suggestions to try to figure out what's causing your bill to be so high, or prove New York State is taking advantage of it and collect some proof. Again, I'll put the resources that I used down in the description of the video, and I hope you use them. If you need any help, you're welcome to send me a message on YouTube, and I'll see what I can do to help you out. Have a good night. Good luck.